He didn't flinch when they laughed behind his back. That was the thing about Isaac. He never blinked, never barked, never begged, just typed, managed, controlled. And that control, it wasn't ceremonial. It was real. The kind of control that doesn't get logged in Slack threads or PowerPoint decks. The kind that sits quietly under everything, holding up the walls. I knew what they thought of him. The relic, they'd mutter in executive meetings while sipping overpriced kombucha. Legacy tech hoarder. Paranoid sysadmin. Blake, our newly minted interim CEO and nepotism's wet dream, once leaned across the glass table and joked, "I bet that guy still backs up to DVDs." Laughter. I didn't join in. I'd seen Isaac's server room. It looked like NASA married a war bunker. Triple redundant power, encrypted vault nodes, failovers that made our CTO's cloud wet dreams look like duct tape and bubblegum. But they didn't care about that. Blake especially. He had that smug Dunning-Kruger aura, the kind that's allergic to expertise unless it's wearing Yeezys. His first act as interim CEO? Announce a collaborative modernization effort. Translation: replace anything older than his Tesla and anyone who didn't genuflect on command. Isaac was doomed the minute Blake heard he still preferred Thunderbird over Gmail. Isaac didn't fight it. Not publicly. He never even raised his voice, just nodded at meetings, attended his daily rituals, scanning traffic, validating license chains, keeping the gears greased in silence. His badge still opened doors most folks forgot existed. He managed every digital asset Virion Labs owned, from the DNS registrar to the root cert authority. The company was built on his skeleton key. They didn't just underestimate him. They forgot he built the locks. If you've made it this far, take 1 second to hit that subscribe button and like the video. 97% of you watch without subscribing, and it really motivates the team to keep bringing stories like this. Thank you. Anyway, Blake brought in his golden boy CTO, Gavin, with his white sneakers and buzzwords like zero trust architecture and cloud-first redundancy. Gavin called Isaac Mr. Command Line in one meeting and pitched migrating everything to some half-baked DevOps stack he probably read about on LinkedIn. Isaac didn't even blink, just scribbled something on a yellow notepad and walked out. I watched it all from the compliance perch, not high enough to intervene, but close enough to smell the rot. Isaac had access no one even remembered to audit. No one had asked about registrar ownership since the founder retired. No one touched the domain metadata. No one even knew what a certificate chain looked like. And Isaac? He just kept documenting. Quietly. Thoroughly, like a man waiting for a final command. It started like most corporate coups do, under fluorescent lights masked as strategy. Gavin, our new CTO, rolled into the first leadership summit in a Patagonia vest and $1,000 sneakers. Whiteboard in hand, eyes lit up like he just discovered fire. We're bottlenecked by legacy systems, he declared, circling a diagram that looked suspiciously like something pulled from a McKinsey deck. Isaac's infrastructure is a single point of failure. We need cloud-first redundancy, zero trust, full modernization. Blake nodded like he understood a damn word of it. To him, it didn't matter what Gavin said as long as it sounded expensive and had the word transition in it. I watched them from the back of the room. Isaac wasn't invited. The guy holding the keys to the kingdom, literally, wasn't even in the castle anymore. That was the beginning. First came the permissions. Isaac's firewall access got migrated to Gavin's DevOps team. Then came license management, reassigned to some intern with a Jira addiction. But even as they chipped away at his tools, they never touched the foundation. The core DNS entries, the domain registrar login, the certificate authority linked to every software license, all still pointed back to Isaac, and none of them had the technical fluency or even the curiosity to ask why. HR started circling like vultures. Performance Recalibration Initiative, they called it. Weekly check-ins, a surprise PIP form conveniently timed with his upcoming contract renewal. The language was always the same. Failure to adapt to evolving workflows, not aligned with cross-functional leadership. Corporate for, you don't play the political game. I saw the paper trail and it made my stomach knot. He never reacted, not the way they wanted. Instead, he started backing up his logs, quietly pulled his personal admin ledger out of cold storage and updated everything. IP ranges, domain transfer restrictions, 2FA tokens linked to hardware keys they didn't even know existed. One night, I passed his desk after hours and saw a single sticky note on his monitor. Custody is not the same as control. He was bracing for the storm, but he wasn't afraid. It wasn't even defiance. It was like watching a locksmith seal the vault he'd built, knowing they were about to lose the combination. I brought it up once, carefully. If things go south, I said, shouldn't we prep handoff documents? Isaac just smiled, tired and unreadable. Funny thing about bridges, he murmured. People only care who built them when they collapse. Then he went back to typing, like he was already preparing the autopsy. The invite landed in everyone's inbox like a digital landmine. All hands, org announcements, no subject line, no agenda. Scheduled for 11:30 a.m. sharp. Anonymous sender, but we all knew it came from HR. And Isaac? He didn't say a word, just clicked accept and went back to monitoring firewall anomalies like it was any other Tuesday. Except it wasn't. The Zoom room filled quickly. Gavin was already grinning like he'd just pulled off a hostile takeover in a board game he didn't understand. Blake sat front and center, framed by a minimalist bookshelf with fake succulents and unread hardcover books. The HR head, Susan, looked pale under the ring light, the kind of pale that only comes from reading a script you didn't write. I'd like to thank everyone for joining today, she began, monotone and mechanical. As part of Varian Lab's ongoing commitment to agility and operational streamlining, we've identified certain legacy redundancies that no longer align with our modernization roadmap. Legacy redundancies. You could practically hear Gavin's erection thump the underside of his standing desk. Susan didn't even look up as she read the next part. Effective immediately, Isaac Granger will be stepping away from his role as systems administrator. We appreciate his years of service and wish him all the best in future endeavors. Silence. Then, click. The unmistakable sound of someone accidentally unmuting for a second and laughing. Probably one of the interns Gavin hired off Discord. No one said anything. No one corrected it. Not even Blake, who leaned back and smirked like he'd just executed a flawless coup. And Isaac? The man didn't flinch. He didn't scowl, didn't stammer, didn't ask a single question. He just reached off screen, pulled his lanyard up into view, and held his badge in front of the webcam for a full 5 seconds. Then he set it gently on the desk, not thrown, not dropped, placed. Like it was part of a ritual. He disconnected without a word. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until the call ended. Everyone filed out like sheep, clicking leave meeting and going about their sanitized corporate day. But I just sat there, staring at the now empty tile where Isaac had been. Because I saw it. I saw what no one else did. That wasn't surrender. That was precision. That was a man marking the end of his chapter, not with bitterness, but with clarity. The kind you only get when you know something the rest of the room doesn't. And Isaac? He knew everything. The parking lot was half empty, sun glaring off windshields like a lineup of silent witnesses. Isaac didn't rush. He moved like someone counting his final steps. Slow, deliberate, immune to the sting of humiliation still echoing in that Zoom room. I watched from the break room window, coffee forgotten in my hand as he reached his car, popped the trunk, and lifted out what looked like a metal case I'd only ever seen once before, during a disaster recovery drill 6 years ago. He didn't take it inside. He didn't need to. Isaac opened the lid and connected to a remote terminal through what looked like a pre-configured mesh link. No corporate network, no traceable handoff. Just clean, cold architecture humming to life. A few keystrokes, a security key insertion, and then silence. No explosions, no red alerts, just a whisper through the wires. The script didn't destroy. That wasn't Isaac's style. It corrected. In less than 90 seconds, domain-level control routed back to its original custodial admin, him. DNS entries, licensing verifications, API call keys, all quietly rekeyed to his personal auth chain, embedded years ago at the base of Varian's system like a digital skeleton key. No one noticed because nothing broke. Yet. Meanwhile, back upstairs, HR was celebrating like they'd just defused a bomb with scissors and blindfolds. I saw Susan walking past Blake's office with a little skip in her step, muttering something about clean transitions. Blake stood near the window with Gavin, both of them laughing. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read his smug lips through the glass. He was a fossil. We'll rebuild better. No one stopped to wonder why Isaac never fought back. No one questioned why he didn't argue, didn't protest, didn't even ask for his severance clause to be read aloud, because arrogance makes you blind to silence. And Blake? He was so high on his own mythology that he mistook Isaac's stillness for surrender. But that script in the trunk? That was Isaac putting his hand on the pressure valve, not to blow it, just to remind them where the pipe led. He wasn't seeking revenge. That would have been messy, childish. Isaac didn't rage. He rebalanced. Like any good systems architect, he didn't want destruction. He wanted integrity, and that integrity had just quietly changed hands right under their filtered fluorescent noses. At first, it was just a whisper. One of the junior PMs mentioned the marketing site was down. Gavin rolled his eyes and said something about caching issues, waved it off like a sneeze. But then sales chimed in, the CRM wouldn't load. No dashboards, no client tracking. A few shrugged it off as routine maintenance until someone tried to launch the internal product portal. 403 forbidden, not 404, not oops, try again later. No, this was access denied, like the building still stood, but the front door had vanished. By minute 16, the Slack workspace began glitching. Avatars disappeared. Threads froze. Gavin snapped at DevOps to restart the integration service. DevOps replied they hadn't touched a damn thing. No commits, no pushes, no deployments. The CI/CD pipeline was clean, logs empty. Then legal pinged. 2 vendors couldn't validate their licensing handshake. Both had auto-expiry clauses tied to certificate chains they didn't control. Gavin opened the licensing dashboard, or tried to, access denied. Blake stepped in, visibly annoyed, and tried his override credentials. Same result, authentication failure. Someone joked it was just Isaac doing a last laugh. Nervous laughter. But when Blake barked at the infrastructure lead to just reassign admin access, she paled. I don't think we can. That's when the inboxes started lighting up. One email from our biggest client, subject line, urgent, access error, breach, another, our procurement team is halting renewals pending security clarification. Gavin lost his cool. Reboot the registrar, he snapped. Fail over. Patch the DNS. What the hell are we even paying IT for? That's when Kyle, the most senior engineer left from pre-Gavin days, stepped up from his desk. Pale, eyes wide, holding his laptop like it had just insulted his bloodline. I tried to get into the domain registrar, the one tied to all our certs, servers, emails, everything. And, Blake barked, 2-factor kicked back a mismatch, then locked me out. I think the owner on file isn't us. Silence. Gavin's face twitched. That's not possible. I checked our documentation. It's under corporate custody. Kyle shook his head slowly. No, it's not. I ran a WOIS trace. It's locked. Under I. Granger custodial admin, with legal transfer restrictions. Blake turned gray. But even then, even in that moment, they still thought it was just an oversight, a temporary hiccup, something they could fix with enough escalation. They hadn't realized yet. They hadn't put it together. They didn't know that the whole skeleton of Virion Labs was already in freefall. The cracks had started. And the one person who could explain the structure wasn't picking up the phone. The all-hands call was still open, forgotten in the chaos like a stove left burning after the house caught fire. Half the participants had already left, assuming the meeting was over. But I stayed. So did a few others, the ones who understood just enough to be terrified, but not enough to fix a damn thing. Then her voice cut through the static like a scalpel. I have a question. It was Margaret, our head of compliance. Normally composed to the point of robotic, she now sounded like someone who had just opened a drawer and found a live grenade. Everyone froze. Gavin had been mid-sentence, ranting about DevOps escalation procedures, but he stopped talking like someone had hit mute on his ego. Margaret didn't wait for permission. She stared dead at her webcam, not blinking. Who, she said slowly, revoked access to our domain registrar account. Silence. Blake leaned forward like a kid bluffing through a pop quiz. We're looking into reset protocols right now. Might be some authentication drift due to the recent offboarding. Stop. Margaret didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. One word and every cursor in the room froze mid-typing. If our certificate authority is decoupled and registrar access is no longer corporate bound, that means we've lost identity verification across every endpoint we own. More silence. Zoom, email, product servers, client licensing, you've handed them a ghost shell and now you're trying to talk your way out of a mirror. Gavin shifted uncomfortably, pulling at the collar of his organic cotton button-down. Look, it's probably just an outdated 2FA profile. We'll escalate to the provider. No, you won't, Margaret said flatly, because this isn't an escalation issue. This is custodial ownership. Isaac never transferred the domain, did he? I watched Blake go from smug to sweaty in under 4 seconds. He opened his mouth, closed it. His face said it all. She didn't even sigh. She just said, to no one in particular, I suggest someone call the lawyer, right now. Then she disappeared from the call, and a second later, my screen lit up with a private message from her. Just one sentence, please tell me you left a failsafe. But I hadn't. I stared at it for a full minute before realizing she hadn't sent it to me. She'd sent it to him. Isaac. She knew. She knew what none of them had the bandwidth to understand. That Isaac wasn't just patching code and babysitting servers. He wasn't that sysadmin guy. He was the dam, the lock, the spine of the entire organism. And now that he was gone, we weren't bleeding. We were hollow. Blake's office turned into a crime scene without a body. Legal had taken over the boardroom. Whiteboards filling with arrows, acronyms, and timelines none of them could verify. People were running around with folders like that meant something, but the truth was simpler than they were willing to admit. No one had a map because the cartographer was gone. I sat outside the glass walls, just close enough to hear snippets through the echo. Breach? Unsecured chain? Contract nullification clause. Every word made their posture worse. Legal was talking fast but offering nothing. The registrar provider wouldn't help. Access was locked behind a personal multi-step verification chain no one could replicate, thanks to a clause they'd never asked about. Meanwhile, on the 6th floor, Margaret had gone ice cold. Blake's assistant, red-faced and panicking, practically whispered the words, like saying them too loud would collapse the whole building. Can you just, please, do something? Anything? Margaret didn't even turn away from her screen. I did something, she said, tone flat enough to make you bleed. I told you not to fire him. But can't you override something? I mean, he was just infrastructure, right? That's when she turned, slowly, deliberately. No, he was the infrastructure. And you pulled the power plug because Gavin thought his Slack emojis were old-fashioned. I would have laughed if the servers weren't already hemorrhaging errors. Downstairs, I imagined Isaac exactly where he was, at his favorite cafe, the one with the burnt coffee and sticky tables that only he seemed to tolerate. He always said he liked it because the Wi-Fi was just bad enough to force you offline, but not completely offline, just enough to watch from a safe distance. He'd have his laptop shut, coffee going cold beside him, phone on silent in the breast pocket of his work shirt that he probably hadn't stopped wearing even post-termination, watching quietly through an encrypted tunnel, browsing public registry logs and certificate monitor dashboards. He wouldn't need admin access to know what was happening. He could see it in the expiration pings, the unrenewed certs, the auto-declined pings from licensing endpoints tied to his old cryptographic chain, a digital autopsy unfolding in real time. Blake called 3 times, straight to voicemail, left a message the 3rd time. I heard it later from someone who grabbed a copy of the call logs before legal locked them down. Isaac, this is Blake. Look, I think we may have gotten off on the wrong foot. I'd really appreciate it if you could give me a call back and walk us through a few things. No hard feelings. We're all aligned on mission here, right? Just give me a call. He never got one. Because when you bulldoze the only bridge, you don't get to ask the river for directions. The reckoning had arrived, and every alert popping up on Blake's dashboard was stamped with the same ghost, a man they'd erased, but whose fingerprints were still holding the walls upright. They waited too long. 3 days after the systems first buckled, with investor calls going unanswered and 2 client contracts suspended pending verification of licensing integrity, Blake finally did what he should have done months earlier. He called the founder, not emailed, not messaged through the usual assistant chain. He called his father-in-law direct, midday, desperate, voice tight and strained, like a kid calling home from jail asking how bail works. The old man answered after 1 ring. "Why?" Blake asked, already defensive. Would Isaac still have the domain access? Why would you let him keep that kind of control? There was a pause so heavy I swear it cut through the walls of the office. "Because I trusted him," the founder said. "You didn't." Blake sputtered something about protocol, about transitions, about the need for centralization. "I gave him custodial access," the old man interrupted, "because Isaac never once failed this company. You know what failure looks like? This, right now." That was the end of the call, but the lawyers were already moving. They'd finally gotten their hands on the original domain trust paperwork, tucked inside an old file structure that hadn't been touched since we were still working out of a rented lab space near the airport. I was called in to sit with legal, not as a witness, just as someone who might understand the language buried in the digital deed. It was clean, crystal clear. The domain and all associated routing infrastructure were registered under I. Granger, custodial admin, Virion Labs IP Trust. Not corporate, not founder, custodial. The legal equivalent of a digital conservator, acting on behalf of the company until such time as the truster, the founder, revoked it. And that had never happened. Even worse, there was no clause mandating automatic transfer upon termination or resignation. In fact, the agreement explicitly stated that any such transfer required written authorization from the original founder, which hadn't been requested, let alone granted. Blake's face went bloodless. He mumbled something about correctable oversight and fiduciary remedy, but the lawyers didn't even pretend to agree. One of them, the new guy from compliance litigation, just closed the folder and said, "There's no breach. There's just a legal custodian who followed the contract." In other words, Isaac hadn't locked them out. He'd simply followed the rules they never bothered to read. And I think that's when it clicked for Blake. Not in a movie way, no dramatic epiphany or tearful apology, just this slow, sinking recognition that he was playing a game whose pieces he never learned to count. Isaac didn't win. There was no parade, no gotcha moment, no glorious return. He just restored balance. He walked away holding nothing more than what had always been his, because he hadn't stolen anything. He hadn't even fought back. He simply never let go of what they never understood. And in that space between ignorance and arrogance, everything they'd built started to crack. It arrived in a thick white envelope with no return address. No lawyer logos, no urgent red stamps, just clean, formal paper and a single embossed seal on the back. Isaac opened it slowly, carefully, like he already knew what was inside. He read every line, even though he didn't need to. "As per our agreement, we'd like to formally transfer credentials related to the Virion Labs digital infrastructure. Please find enclosed the requested verification form, along with notarized signatures from the current executive team and founding member authorizing the change." Translation: they'd finally stopped bluffing. No threats, no guilt, just paperwork, real paperwork. Isaac leaned back in his seat, the same seat he'd occupied for the past decade. Not at Virion, no. That chapter was closed. But in his little home office, the one with the blinking modem light, the quiet hum of air filters, the locked safe beside the desk. He hadn't chased this moment. He'd simply waited for the process to catch up. He reached for a slim drive tucked under a loose floorboard and plugged it in, opened one file. A silent countdown script that would have triggered a complete DNS renewal collapse if left untouched beyond 90 days. Not malicious. Just expiry. Like digital autumn. He deleted it without fanfare. Then he typed one sentence, just 10 words. "Now that we're aligned, access has been restored." He hit send. Across town, Virion's main site blinked back to life. The product suite authenticated, vendor dashboards lit up, licensing systems resynced. The logs filled with green pings, one after another, systems coming home like stray dogs, finally hearing a familiar whistle. Margaret was the first to acknowledge it. She didn't email. She didn't call. She simply sent one Slack message to legal. It's done. Blake didn't survive the month. Official word was executive rotation for performance recalibration. Internally, it was less poetic. The board had seen the call logs, the legal gaps, the investor panic. He was a liability now, not for what he did, but for what he didn't understand. Isaac never spoke publicly about what happened. No LinkedIn posts, no interviews. He didn't even accept the polite follow-up emails from Gavin, begging for a thought leadership collaboration or future advisory potential. He just kept doing what he always did, maintaining what mattered, quietly, thoroughly. And me? I kept that final message pinned in my inbox for months, because that one line said it all. They fired the admin, but forgot who owned the keys.